السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Today I want to give in a analogy, an example of when damage is done or there is an accident that occurs and there is a result of loss and negligence due to negligence and damages. In the system of intelligence, there is a body designated to investigate and to rule out what is the findings of responsible, accountable, based on neglect, duty of care, and then on the other side, if it's a clear-cut accident and it's no one particular fault, still those records are collected in order to avoid that to happen in the future. So most times someone will be designated with charge, who they will have to serve a penalty. Other times it's just a warning and apology issued to the community. However, the government has a system in place. They'll collect the data, they'll do the investigation, and they'll find their rulings in order to cause prevention from it ever occurring again in that way. For if it had occurred in the way, once the government or the authorities have acknowledged that, and it were to occur time after time, then there's compensation, and there is a big responsibility for someone to step down or to be fired from their position due to neglect. Now, when you look at an event and it's disturbing because of the injustice that's caused to it, when you look at a situation and you feel like you want to help that situation, but there's nothing you can do about it, well, first we need to look at how did it get to that situation, and was there any signs or was there any manifestations that showed itself that this was indeed occurring long before, and yet due to our own standards we couldn't see it or we didn't want to see it. So when we look around the world and we see all these injustice and all these sad situations of individuals losing everything, the bloodshed that's associated to it all, the greed. So this is all been happening for the last 100 years. And just like a car accident, a roadside trauma and investigator will come to the scene and he will do a millimeter, inch by inch test investigation, depending where the tire marks start from, where the collision is, where the bits of car crash parts, the debris is left on the road. They'll determine exactly how fast that individual was doing. They can even determine where they were on the road, and even to the point where they can understand what was happening in that person's mind and body. So this is just one event, one example. Now you got humanity, you got all these countries, all these governments of republics, of democracy now. Yeah, from 1923, they've established themselves. Before 1923, however, they were all under one major rule. And then there was actually authorities, assigned under the one rule. So you had ministers and you had generals and you had sultans, right-hand men who did do the work that was required in order to make that balance and justice. So in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, he gave us our honor by saying, when you're under the rule, the one rule, when you have the head at the top, and he rules you, then you are successful. There's khair for you, there's goodness. And he even said, if the second one were to come while you have the first one there, remove the second one. Because that will cause fitna, it will cause disunity and tribulation. And Islam is about balance and justice. So we look at these countries in the Middle East and we look at how devastating their situation is. Day after day, they're getting pelted, they're getting destroyed. Yani, today, if someone scratches our car in this modern society with so many rules and regulations, just that one scratch, you want justice for it. And you probably will get it. You'll take them to court, or you'll take them to your insurer, or something will happen and you'll get your car fixed, given you have the evidence for it. And this is what it's all about. We need evidence, we need to gather the evidence, and we need to be intelligent in order to recollect, to make that understanding, intellectual correspondence, to know, hold on a minute, who is responsible here? So the Muslims, yeah, in 1923, they stood up and they put arms, they drawed their swords out and their weapons towards other Muslims who had the rule of Khalifa, al Sultanate at that time. So they think and they thought they were doing something useful by, under the name of, let's save the Arabs from the Turks. That's what the historians have written from the modern last century, who were Freemasons at this instance also. They were Freemason leaders with Britain and Russia and France. So the majority of Muslims from those regions who supported this new coming of Muslim trend and republic and democracy, they followed them and they drew their weapons and started massacring a lot of Muslims, all the way to Topkapı in Istanbul. Now, you look at the situation, Muslims turn their backs on the rules and regulations, the duties, the responsibilities of honor and servanthood. For even if our leader is a Bedouin, the Prophet says, a Bedouin slave, we still need to obey him. You can't rebel. If you rebel, then you've just shown the next opposition and the next egotistical driven maniac to say, hold on, now I can be a leader. And then that system of protection, yeah, it was being in jeopardy. And that's exactly what's happened. So they removed this system that had succeeded from the Prophet ﷺ all the way down till 1923. Never was there an unbroken link between one ruler for the Muslim world. There was times when it was there was affliction in between that, because there was push and shove for leadership, but it sorted itself out. But never did we say we don't have a leader, like we have been saying the last 100 years. You can have governments and you can have prime ministers, you can have presidents. It's not the same thing. So we need to establish how this happened and who's responsible. And Egypt plays a big role in this. Egypt has a big role in it. Britain is the one who also allocated the Jews to be in Israel. And the biggest leaders of the Jews at that time in Britain, they were reluctant. They said, we don't want to go there and have our own state in Jerusalem, Palestine, because they knew it's going to offend Muslims. And that's how original, sincere people are. They don't want affliction. They don't want to leave something horrible on the day of judgment they have to face, which is injustice and breaching the rights of humanity and creatures of Allah. So when Britain were dancing out of joy that they have a new leader that looks after them with human rights and equality, and they promised them democracy. So they actually were saying, get rid of this sultanate, get rid of this khalifa. We don't need them. We need the West to give us money and to make us all rich, and we want to be leader. Why do we have leaders? Let me be leader. That was the mentality. So little did they know, each sultan has a sheikh. It's called Sheikhul Islam. Anything a sultan had done through history, any khalifa had done, they had their sheikh, which was the most experienced, tell them and advise them whether it's acceptable or not, haram or halal, whether it's in sunnah or not. And Even Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, the 11th century, the sultan that had conquered Palestine at that time. Yeah, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi. His sheikh's name was Nuri Zangid. Now he was that was his successor. Sorry, that was his leader beforehand. But Sultan Salah ad-Din Ayyubi also had his sheikh, and he said, "Don't think that my sword is what's conquered this land." He said, "No, it was my sheikh Fadil, his pen, that has conquered this land." Subhanallah. So spirituality comes before materialism, yeah, before the physical. So we are not interested in learning how this devastating crash scene occurred. We can't live and look back 2 days without using our intelligence. As soon as we look back, we feel rage. We become worse than an animal in our assessment, yeah, in our intelligence to determine who are we, what are we, where do we come from, where we're going. So if I was to tell you a few events now of history and the precautions that were in place, and if I told you them, and yet in the individual that is listening has no requirement or no understanding or no interest in history, the past, then the words we're going to say is not going to make any sense because they are too absorbed in this modern way of banking systems, financial standards, yeah, interests, getting loans, having the best and the most flashiest cars, having the best houses, dressing their children up the best way, going even to the mosque to show off how their status is better than the man they're standing next to. Yet, if history doesn't mean anything, then the future has no point and value. So the minute we let go of our khalifas, the minute that we got fooled by the hypocrites and we turned on Islam, our leaders, and now you look around the world and you see all this devastation. Now it's moving into Syria, it's moved from Lebanon, Palestine, and this is just the recent ones. Before that, you had Afghanistan, you had Iraq. Before that, you had Dagestan, you had Chechnya, Kashmir. Before that, it doesn't end. 100 years we've done this to ourselves. Why? Because we gave up our honor from following the believers and we ended up following the hypocrites that promised us the dunya. So the Prophet says, when you stop running for the akhirah and you start running for the dunya, it's the end of you. And that's what's happened in 100 years. So our responsibility is to understand how did this new mentality of neglecting our leaders, our proper leaders that Allah has allocated for us, neglecting the Khalifa, the one rule the Prophet ﷺ put in place for us to succeed, and how we have neglected them and come to the standard of following people that are hypocritical, who have no worth, and that yet when they're making fatwa for us, rulings, and when they're uniting our country with other countries, they're making secret deals to sell us out for our economy, for our commerce. So we need to understand how did all this occur and who is responsible. That's why you have evidence. That's why you have evidence of history. And we need to understand that. So now when you look at these evidence and you look at the world situation, know that for every 50 years, what they've planned as leaders is occurring now. And only an intelligent person can tell you what is most likely to occur in the next 50 years if we live that long. Why? Because the deals they're making today, it's obvious what's happening. They're selling out the people who are down there, who have spirituality. They're trying to crush them. And the people who have wealth and who are greedy and selfish, yeah, they are benefiting. They're pocketing everything. It is unfortunate. We can sit here and say, oh, how sad, or how can they do this to these Palestinians? How can they do this? And yet, all we need to say is we allowed them to do this. It's that simple. We allowed them to do this. How did we allow them to do this? By not loving each other, by not uniting under the one banner of Islam. We are so deluded and absorbed in our ego, we can't even put aside our desires and our lusts and our egos in order to unite just under that one banner. We can't do that. And that's how deluded we are. We think we are the righteous people, we're the chosen people, yet we don't even accept the chosen leaders for ourselves. We're accepting what government and the British, yeah, the monarchy has put there for us. Yeah. Now, all this is open. It's open and clear evidence. People try to hide it They couldn't, because the truth always prevails. Allah Azza wa Jal warns us. Yeah, He warns us of a time like this where the truthful, He will take them away from us, and the false, the hypocrites will become leaders, and they will start making fatwa rulings that will cause harm and injustice. And this is what we're witnessing now. And it's because we have no leader. We sold our leaders out, the sultans and the khalifa that succeeded. Yeah, the sultans that succeeded khalifa. We sold them out. And we are responsible for that, no one else, ourselves. Now we see innocent people under the hands of oppressors. Why? Because we are no longer united. We're no longer having that front of that protection. Yeah, we don't have a front. We don't have unity. So when someone looks at us, they know that they can crush us. Why? Because we become like barbarians. We're barbaric now. We don't even have spirituality. Yeah, we want to air raid, we want to make sounds of takbir, Allahu Akbar, but there's no spirituality towards it. So you're exposing yourself. You're saying, here, look, I have potential to be righteous, and when I am righteous, one takbir will destroy you, but I'm not righteous yet. So you prematurely put yourself out there so they can remove you, so that one day you might not become righteous and have strength. That's how we are. We can't protect ourselves. We can't unite as one. And that's why when we don't acknowledge the past, there's no way you can prepare for the future. For they have been writing, yeah, the future. They've been writing their plots and plans for the past 100 years. And it's all starting to come clear. And not one thing happens without Allah's decree and His permission. So why has Allah allowed this to happen to us? Why has Allah taken away our unity and our honor and our strength? Why? It's a question. Valid question. Deserving a valid answer. Why? Because we can't unite. Ikhwani Muslimin. It's not a gang or a terror group. Ikhwani Muslimin is the Prophet Muhammad established Muslim brotherhood and the love, yeah, and protection of believers for one another. Ikhwani Muslimin means when the Prophet says Muslims are one body. If the eye hurts, the whole body hurts. So yeah, we're seeing people now that are struggling around the world. We hurt for a moment when we see it, but we don't feel it ongoing because we're too busy with the dunya. If you felt it ongoing, then you'll realize what changes can we do. And the change starts with one thing. In your heart, request, invoke Allah, make dua to Allah give you the leadership to make you a leader of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat wa Salaf al-Salihin with Iman and with spirituality and Ihsan. And with that leadership, you give one dua, you give one takbir, and from here, Allah will unite you to those believers and Muslims out there who are struggling. And from there, you'll see each other's faces and the believers will recognize each other. And Allah will send His awliyaullah, will send His prophets and the martyrs, yeah, who Allah says they do not die, He will send them to aid them. But first we need to be kind and loving for each other. First we need to establish the unity as one body, one body. When the eye hurts, the whole body hurts. So if we can't take history from the last 100 years, how are we going to take history from the last 1400 years of Muhammad salam's hadith and the Quran Kareem? So we need to wake up and we need to let go of these designs that we have. Now, fashion is what destroyed us mainly. Fashion of this modern age. In the last 40 years, we've witnessed such fashion styles. Today, people are getting dressed and putting on all these makeups. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, this is a form of adultery. It's a form of listening to shaitan and taking him as your leader. In fact, someone who goes from A to B in an unauthorized manner in Islam and Sunnah, the Prophet says when they come home, they should have ghusl again, for they have been engaged in adultery. And the people that are doing this don't even know they're doing it anymore. Why? Because they can't look back to see what is their honor and unity and what is the way of justice upon their own haqq, their own rights, justice upon their own rights. When you destroy yourself and your honor because you're unjust to yourself, you only have yourself to blame. And when we do it as a collective community, then the whole community has their own community to blame. So we're blamed for what we are doing. We are punished for what we have occurred for. We have developed this system and we are punished for it. It's simple. Look back at the Prophet, learn the Hadith, learn the Quran, and try to maintain that unity for it. Have your identity adjust to those identities that are described for the Prophet and for the Sahaba. and the tabi'een and tabi'een. Have that honor to follow them, and Allah will restore the honor back. But when you follow your ego and your desires, then you're going to see more people struggling and more people dying. And the ones that struggle the most are the ones that are the most innocent of this. For the innocent ones, Allah takes them to Him in His mercy. The ones who are still living in this dunya comfortably, Allah says He let go of their rope so they can earn their spot in Jahannam, in hellfire. Again, these hadiths, these references, these topics will offend a lot of people. Why? Because yesterday is too far for them. They can't reflect to yesterday. They only want to reflect today for the tomorrow. Today is even non-existent for them. Because when they're living today, it's about how tomorrow is going to be. They're looking at things that's not even theirs, that it's not even in their hands. When you're trying to attain to things that are not promised for you and not in the decree of Allah for you, then you have gone mad. It means dunya is your priority. Dunya is your Lord at that point. So Allah protect us, Allah unite us, Allah give us strength, and Allah save us from ourselves, our egos. Oh Allah, You are the controller of the hearts. Make our hearts steadfast upon Your religion, and do not leave us alone to our nafs, our desire, our ego for the wink of an eye, or less than that in duration. Ameen. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم إن القوة لله جميعا إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تكبير الله أكبر اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خير.